I know. We'd like to call to order our workshop for May 16th, 2023 at 5 o'clock. Declaration of a quorum, 6 members present, 1 on the way. I'd like to welcome everybody. Thank y'all for joining us. Brings us to item C, hearing of citizens. Do we have anything? Nothing. Brings us to item D1, consideration and discussion regarding the CSISD Long-Range Facility and Bond Planning Committee recommendations. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Horak and board members. Before I turn things over to Dr. Johnson and our visitors, she'll do introductions and all things associated with the committee's work, I do want to mention this. We're receiving the information from the committee this evening. There is no action needed or expected this evening. The board has June, July, until mid-August to continue to have conversations, ask specific questions of administration and workshop, in particular in June and July, before you have to come to any type of decision associated with the recommendation. So you'll receive the information tonight, but I've got plenty of time to receive additional details at future workshops before any decisions associated with whatever action you see appropriate. So I just wanted to mention that before we get started. So with that, Dr. Johnson.
Thank you, sir. President Horak, Superintendent Martindale, members of the board, thank you so much for having us here tonight. It is definitely my pleasure to be here and support the members of your committee who will be presenting to you this evening. Before I turn it over, I would like to say a few things. This committee was so committed to the process. They were punctual. They were there every night. I mean, it was just incredible to be in this room and see it full every time. You know these people have lives outside of this, and they were so dedicated to the process. The questions they asked, the comments they made, the sidebar conversations, everything was about your students, which is exactly what we want in a committee such as this. We don't want it to be side-railed or the course to be off and getting into topics that were not pertinent, and everything was about your kids, and they were so passionate about your students. And so I just want to say that before I turn it over, because that is exactly what we want. We want them to know that they're in that room making the decisions for your students and making decisions that are going to have a lasting impact on students who you don't even have yet in your school district. And so with that being said, we do have 2 members of our committee here tonight who will present to you. We have Rick Bennett and Kim Ege. But before they start, we have the most important voices in the room, and that is 2 of your students. Stella Bales, who is a sophomore at A&M Consolidated High School, is with us, and Lena Abdulwahed, who is a junior at College Station High School. And these 2 young ladies are going to kick off the presentation and explain to you their experience on the committee. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Stella.
Hi everyone, my name is Stella Bales and I'm a sophomore at A&M Consolidated High School. When I was thinking about what to say about my experience, I would like to say it was very enlightening, and honestly it was kind of fun. Every Tuesday or Thursday, I would always look forward to coming to these meetings and sitting at my table number 2. At first I was nervous being a teenager and sitting with people I didn't know, but then I came in and I saw everyone's warm smiles and my attitude immediately changed. My favorite part about the meetings was coming in and setting all my things down and Danny saying the expert was here and being asked about how my day was. Sitting here for the past few weeks, I've soaked in a lot of knowledge, and I hope I can use it in the future. Listening to all of the changes this bond will have to the CSISD district makes me so proud. I have a little sister coming to Consol next year, and I want her to have the best experience that she possibly can, and I hope we're making it happen with this bond. As a College Station student, resident, and teenager, I used my knowledge to the best of my ability in helping give insight on how my school, work, and life is. I love my school district, and I'm so grateful that I was asked to be on this council. Even though I'm graduating 2 years, I want the next generations to have the experience they deserve. To everyone who worked on this, thank you so much for trying to make this district a better place. Again, thank you, and I hope to see y'all again. And here's Lena.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lena Abdelwahid. I'm from College Station High School. And so at first, I kind of had no idea what I was listening to at the beginning of the presentations. They were talking about projection this, projection that, all the projections, and I sort of was clueless as to what I was doing here. But I slowly got used to all of the information that I was being told. And together, I feel like all of us really made a good decision about what to put on the bond. So I really hope you guys consider it, because I feel like as like a woman of color who is also young, I was very nervous at first to be on the committee. But everyone welcomed me so warmly. I met so many other people in the community, from teachers to businesswomen and men. And overall, I had a really great experience. So I hope you guys consider the bond. Thank you so much.
And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to our presenters, Mrs. Ege and Mr. Bennett.
Okay. And thank you, students, for your involvement in the committee. I want to say that ahead of time, because I know we really appreciated your insight and your experiences. And thank you, Mr. Martindale and school board members, for hearing this presentation. I'm going to jump right in and show you this slide. This has the 48 members that were on our committee from our community. 48 members who needed to come down to one decision and one proposal. So I want to tell you a little bit about how that worked. We were sitting at 6 table groups of 8 members each, and when it came down to time to decide what we were going to put forward today, the way that that worked was we first voted at our tables. Each individual could vote, and if there were at least two-thirds of the people at that table that voted yes for an item, then that table would vote yes. And in the room, if there were 4 tables out of 6, again, at least two-thirds that voted yes, then the item went forward into this proposal today. So that's kind of the process of what we went through to get from 48 people down to one proposal today. Just a little bit more about the people that were on our committee. I think we were chosen to bring a variety of perspectives and experiences to the committee. For example, at my own table, I can say there was a woman who has grandchildren in our district and has been a long time, has had a lot of involvement in our district. We had 2 teachers, one of whom also has children in the district. And of the parents at our table, we have students at a number of the schools, as well as, of course, as you've heard, we had a high school student at each one of our tables. So we came with a lot of different perspectives. It wasn't groups of people that all knew each other going into it. So I feel like we had a lot of great things to learn from each other. This is just a reminder that we were given at the beginning of every meeting of what our purpose and charter was. So because of this, we were considering the needs of our district and facilities over a long period of time, and also in all different areas of our district. So we were not just considering one particular facility or one particular program. We're considering a variety of needs for all of the students in our district. So this slide shows you an overview of our meetings, and I'll spend a little bit of time just telling you the kind of things that we learned as a committee. At our first meeting, we were, of course, given the charge that we had and the process and the timeline that we would use. And let me tell you, Lizzie made sure that we stuck to this, because sometimes there would be a question raised, and the answer would be, you're going to find out in meeting number 4. So there was a very specific way that they wanted us to take in information and consider it, and that's what we did. At meeting number 1, we also heard from Mr. Hall about the bond from 2021 and an update on how those projects were going, what was still in progress. And we talked a little bit about some of the economic effects that have happened since then, and inflation and things that we all know about, so that we could consider that we would probably approach this bond a little differently with some of those taken into consideration. At that first meeting, we also heard from Ms. Drozd, and she gave us a bit of a very quick overview of school finances as it relates to what we needed to consider as a committee. So she told us about how school district tax rates work and the different components of that, as well as a history of bonds in our district. Right. Meeting number 2 is when we jumped into demographics, and we had Mr. Templeton there from Zonda Demographics to talk about our local economic conditions, how we are growing the different home sales in our area, and also we got to see a forecast of enrollment by schools for the next 10 years. At that meeting, we also met Mrs. Fleming from VLK Architects, and she explained the process that they went through to assess all of our district facilities. And she told us how they assess them for all sorts of different things, not just the condition of the facility, but things like capacity and how they affect the way our students learn. So at that point, we were given a condition assessment for every school campus, for our high school stadiums and field houses, and also for our other buildings like central office and the transportation center, for example. Meeting number 3 was actually not a regular meeting. It was a Saturday facilities tour. And I feel like this was one of the most impactful things we got to do as a committee, because we got to put eyes onto the facilities that maybe we don't have a student at. And so we could see what was there. We got to go to Southwood Valley, where we saw a school where part of it had already been renovated with Bond 2021 money, and the rest of it is still awaiting its renovation this summer. And so it was very impactful to see what a renovation to a school can do and the difference that it can make. We also visited Rock Prairie Elementary, one of our elementaries that has not been recently renovated. We visited College Station Middle School and its football field, as well as its concession trailer and restrooms, and it immediately sparked conversation in our committee on what might be needed in some of our middle school facilities. We visited both comprehensive high schools, so at Consol and at CSHS, we visited and toured the football stadium, the field houses, and a science classroom. So a lot of discussion there too about what our high schools might need that day. And then at our next meeting, we actually also got a tour of the central office here and the office space that is used every day. So I feel like that was a really important part of our process to note. At the 4th meeting, we did hear from Ms. Fleming again, our architect, to hear what we should be addressing in a long-range facilities plan, and how they calculate project costs. So there was a lot of information given, because at this meeting, we saw for the first time the list of proposed projects, how much they were projected to cost, and the timelines for those. So it was a really big meeting. I'm not going to go into that a lot because Rick will get into that. But at our 5th meeting, we heard from a financial advisor. We heard a lot more about how school bonds work. We looked at our district's historical tax rates, and it was noted that they have actually been decreasing since 2017. We looked at the current bonds held by our district, and we were given a bond capacity analysis. So they told us things like, if you as a committee were to put forward this level of debt in new bonds, this is how it might potentially affect the tax rate, versus if you were to give a different level of debt, how it might potentially affect it. And I think that's really important, because the committee didn't go into this not having any idea how it might affect our community and the finances of our school district. And we want to make a choice, and I know you guys want to make a choice that's also financially responsible. At meeting number 6 is when we had our final votes, and that helped us to put forward the package that we're going to now present to you tonight.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Before we get into the numbers here, I want to just take a second and thank Dr. Lizzie Johnson for her facilitating of these meetings. She was on point and kept us on task. You can imagine with 48 people plus in the room, how it was easy to get off task, and I want to thank her. I also want to thank Melissa Templeton with VLK Architects for her information. That was just invaluable to our process. Also, Bob Templeton with Zonda Demographics for his analysis of our community and how it's going to affect our district in the future. But most importantly, I want to thank all the CSISD administration and the staff that contributed to our meetings. All the knowledge, they answered every question. If they didn't have an answer, they found an answer for us. And I just want to sincerely reach out and thank everyone and for their process through this, because sometimes it got grinding. And when it got grinding, we leaned on the administration and the staff to pull us through. So As we get into the current bond proposal here, I just want to make it known that there were 25 total projects with priorities. And the way that our table looked at this as things being priority 1, priority 2, and priority 3, we kind of looked at it as priority 1s being what the district needed, and priority 2s being kind of what the district needed, and also a little bit of what they wanted, and some of the priority 3s as being what they would like to have. And that was kind of the concept that we kept at our table. Of the 25 proposed projects, 17 of these were approved. 10 of these were priority 1, totaling $280,637,000. 7 of these were priority 2 or option 2 for central office that totaled $70,225,000. Now, I want to go through this list, and I'm going to just point out a few highlights of each one of these as we go through this. And obviously, this is just a picture. You guys are going to have the opportunity to go back and really break this down and take a look at this in the coming months. But I just want to run through these real quick and just make a few notes and just highlight some of the things that are included within these proposed projects. The first one was a priority 1, and that was district-wide safety for $5 million. This was to upgrade our security vestibules, fencing around our facilities, as well as updating cameras and other safety procedures around our campuses. Rock Prairie Elementary, which was also a priority 1, for $13,820,000, is pretty much a comprehensive renovation there. As Kim mentioned, when we went through the tour and we got to tour Southwood Valley Elementary School, we saw half the school renovated and the other half that wasn't renovated. For me personally, this was a no-brainer. When you go through, and if you haven't had the opportunity to do that, I encourage you to do that because you can really see the difference. Also, a priority 1 is the A&M Consolidated High School additions and renovations for $50,751,000. This is pretty much comprehensive renovations to the cafeteria, in the fine arts, athletics, plus additions to the science classrooms, as well as other academic facilities. Another priority 1 that was approved is the College Station High School additions and renovations for $62,256,000. This is expansion of College Station High School, adding a 3rd gym, plus a black box theater for fine arts. We know that College Station High School is at capacity. And with the renovation of both of these high schools, I think we're pretty confident that it will provide our high school capacity for the next 8 to 10 years. Is that what we decided? That will increase capacity at the high schools to 2,700 students per high school, which pretty much takes out the conversation of a 3rd high school anytime soon. So our table felt like these were very important proposals on this bond to expand these high schools, to be able to get College Station High School out of portable buildings and get them back into the main buildings, but also expand a consolidated high school as well. Another priority 1 was the CTE Center Phase 2 for $32,150,000. Our current CTE facility that is in the process of breaking ground, that's Phase 1. This is Phase 2 on this bond that will include CTE classrooms, as well as added space for other CTE programs, including agriculture and any other CTE need. They'll have the space in the facility to do that. A priority 2 that passed was at College View High School CTE Cosmetology Lab for $1,355,000. I believe this will, for the first year, provide cosmetology for 25 students year 1 and 50 students year 2. Another priority 1 that was passed was the middle school athletic fields for $13,160,000. What this does is expand seating at the middle school fields, provides artificial turf, and new restrooms and concessions. And we felt that this was an important issue with middle school soccer coming in next year, But like Kim said, if you've ever been to CSMS, that's really all you need to go see. So another priority one was A&M Consolidated High School Fieldhouse additions and renovations for $11,352,000. That will expand the weight room and the locker rooms in that facility across the street with additional building space for sports medicine and baseball locker rooms. Again, if you haven't been across the street to see the needs over there, I encourage you to do that. A priority two project that was approved was Tiger Stadium renovations for $20,100,000. That includes expanded seating with the rebuild of restrooms and concession stands, and also upgrades to the press box and the track. Another priority two that was approved was Cougar Stadium renovations, excuse me, for $7,020,000 with similar renovations as the Tiger Stadium. Another priority two was A&M Consolidated High School and CSISD High School baseball and softball field renovations for $13,270,000. This will turf those fields, upgrade seating capacity, upgrading all the facilities around those structures, and basically make these fields a little bit more playable in weather like we've had this last week. I touched on central office option number 2. That was the one that was passed. There were 3 options that we had for central office. Option number 1, obviously, is not to do anything. Or option number 1 was just to renovate this building that we're in now and the one adjacent to us. Option number 2 was to do the renovation to this building, the one next to us, but also allow the district to go out and find another facility if needed to move part of central office to another location. And our third option was obviously not to do anything, but the committee selected to pass option 2 to allow the district to renovate the existing buildings we have here, but also have the opportunity to look off campus to find other facilities if needed. Excuse me again. And to do this would increase the office space from 46,000 square foot that they currently have to 110,000 square foot and secure this facility. As you know, this facility has no security around it. Technology priority 1 passed at $19,949,000, as well as priority 2 for technology for $8,323,000. There's a lot encompassed in these technology priorities. One of them is to upgrade the technology in the classroom with smart boards, whatever they need. When technology priority 2 came in, our table had a lot of discussion about devices and teachers having to share devices. And I think that was one of the selling points with priority 2. That's one of the few priority 2s that you see on here, is that with priority 2, this allows each teacher in each classroom to have their own devices. Therefore, they're not having to share devices with other classrooms, which the teachers at our table and the teachers in the room felt that was very important. So I'll go back to transportation priority 1 that I missed for $11,245,000. Part of this includes to replace 60 aging buses. It's my understanding we have buses in circulation that are over 10 years old that are continuously breaking down. This also provides the ability for transportation to expand the district's white fleet, which it's my understanding we rent a lot of vehicles from rental car companies to get students to and from functions. This will help alleviate some of that also. A big topic at our table was deferred maintenance. Deferred maintenance priority 1 that you see up there for $45 million that's a big number. There was a priority 2 for $20 million and a priority 3 for an additional $10 million. We felt that $45 million was a good number to get the district down the road for the next 4 or 5 years in terms of deferred maintenance. And the last project that passed on here was priority 2 for land acquisition for $500 to potentially meet the needs of future facilities in the district. This total package comes together at $350,862,000. We understood as a committee that was a big number. And there were a lot of debates at our table and as well as other tables as how far do we want to take this number. There were priority threes on here that were discussed a lot that didn't make this bond, and there was a lot of reasoning behind that. There was an indoor athletic facility that we talked about that did not make the bond. There was a community center in this that did not make the bond. We felt as a committee is that we wanted to be cognizant of the taxpayer dollar and where we're at and where we're trying to take our high schools and where we're trying to take Rock Prairie and where we're trying to take these other facilities. So with that being said, the committee recommendation is that the College Station ISD Long Range Facilities Planning Committee recommends the College Station ISD Board of Trustees call a bond election for November 7th, 2023. Now, next month at your workshop, you'll have the opportunity to see details of these projects, proposition options, as well as how the tax implications of this bond. Your July workshop, you'll continue to have these discussions. Excuse me. On August 21st, 2023 is the deadline to formally call an election. Early voting is October 23rd through November 3rd, and election day is November 7th, 2023. At the end of every meeting, we ended with this slide because this is why we were all in the room. There were a lot of discussions about what we felt the district needed. There were a lot of discussions about what we felt the district wanted, and a lot of things that the district would like to have. I think this bond, at the end of the day, is very aggressive, but I think it's something that we need to put out in front of the public. This will definitely make our district a more educational, functional. We've got a lot of kids coming in. This is a bond that I know Kim and I believe in and the people at our table believed in, and we appreciate your consideration. And I guess we can answer any questions that you might have if need be about the process. The details are yours now.
And like Rick mentioned, June workshop administration will dig into detail on each of these particular proposals for you to ask questions as far as scope and those types of things.
I would like, first of all, to thank the two of you, the two students, everybody else that participated in the process. I know y'all put in a lot of hours, and it is much, much appreciated. Rick, you mentioned any questions about the process. What did the two of you think about the process? Did you feel comfortable at the end of this that you had the information you needed and the other committee members needed?
Well, I think number one, when we started this process, believe it or not, we were much like the high school students that were here. We didn't really know what we were walking into. I think with the way that the process was put together was very informative. I think we had all the information that we needed to make educated decisions on the projects. I think, again, if we asked a question and there wasn't an answer, it didn't take us, by the next day, we had the answer to the question. So I thought the process was, it really put this type of decision-making back into the community's hands, because with the representation of the committee members that we had there, I think we covered just about from retirees to parents with young kids that aren't even in the district yet. So I thought the process was very informative. I thought it was very integrated the way it was set up. You know, each one of these, and I said this at every meeting, we could take each one of these projects and spend 2 hours talking about it and probably still not get everything covered. But I think we had the information available to us to make the decisions to put together this bond package.
Yeah, I liked that in each meeting, we didn't really talk about it, but we would hear a part of a presentation and then we would have time to talk as a table group. And there were always the experts in the room that we could ask questions to. So we could just call someone over to our table and say, hey, we're confused about this, and they could answer a question. I actually learned a lot about a number of things in the process that I found really helpful. So there were always people there to answer questions. That was really important part of the process. And I think, too, it's important to say, you know, it's a hard process because there are a lot of different stakeholders in the room, and we may not all vote exactly the same way on something. But the process helped us make a group decision in a way that was fair, in a way that considered the needs of everybody. And so I appreciated that about it.
Ms. Martindale, I had a practical question. In June, when we go into detail, will members of the committee be there to answer some questions?
I think right now, unless requested otherwise, administration would begin to manage the questions. If you're looking for a particular perspective from committee members, I think we can probably reach out and get that information. And again, the way I envision it, Mr. Decker, is the committee has done their work. They're presenting their proposal to you. They've had lots of conversation, and we're appreciative of them volunteering their time. I would hesitate to put them through a lot of Q&A. I think administration should be able to handle that. And again, if something comes up as far as what did the committee think about this, I would allow administration to reach out and get that feedback and deliver it back to the board.
Just because I know we were, not all of us, any of us was at any of each of the meetings, and so if there's some kind of continuity, I know Ms. Draws probably took copious notes throughout the thing. But I'd like to say thank you for all y'all, and I think for the students and your peers, if anybody questions about where our country, especially our community, is going, that investment for them and the fact they're able to speak up and advocate, not for them, but for the kids that'll come after them, really warms my heart, makes it valid what we do here. I think what was evident to me, and even with all those discussions at the table, is a bond has to be called. I think it's on us about being judicious with the taxpayers' money. But I think, like you said, Mr. Bennett, it's a huge vote of confidence from the community, seeing that this is what is necessary for us. And it's not just an upgrade, it's a necessary to maintain. So I appreciate all y'all's work. And I thought it was interesting, not to steal Part B's thunder, but y'all's identification about technology for the teachers, putting it in the hands of the educators. It also came up in that survey as we're doing, where a lot of teachers brought that up, that this is a big impact. So thank you for listening. I think it also shows we're all on the same page here, a lot of unity within the district.
Very much.
You guys make me proud. I don't know if that's like weird to say, but I was fortunate enough to get to come to 4 of the 6 meetings, and like Dr. Johnson said, you guys showed up. I mean, you guys were ready to work every single time. I don't know if they're caffeinated or not, but they showed up every single time. And you could tell that a lot of the tables struggled with a lot of this information. And they asked each other hard questions. And they had some great discussions. And as an observer, I very much appreciated everything that you all put into it, and the students. And it, like Blaine just said, it warms my heart that all of you were so willing to spend the time and to help us with such a huge decision. Because to me, this is a really big decision. We're going to ask a lot of our community here in November. And I appreciate all the work that you put into it. And was it a good enough experience that you do it again? I'm going to totally put you on the spot.
Don't ask tonight.
No, I'm totally putting them on the
Don't
spot.
answer yet. Give them a little while.
This one first.
Right. Well, you guys did a great job already.
Thank you.
And I really do appreciate it, and I'm proud of this community.
Yeah, as everybody said, thank y'all so much. Dr. Johnson, thank you. Melissa, thank you for attending and being here. All committee members, kiddos. It's like I said the last night, y'all put your passion into this, and that's what it takes, because without that, we can't get out to the community to educate everybody. And so we appreciate your efforts there. And depending on what the board decides as we move through this process, we'll call on y'all to be advocates whichever way we need to go on this. So thank y'all again.
Right, and as closing, echo everything already been said. Thank you both for being willing to present. the committee's recommendation this evening. It takes a lot to present. I'm grateful for both of you and your commitment to the district community. Lizzie, thank you for leading the process and many people involved in this. So again, thank you. Thank you for taking the time this evening, preparing and presenting. All right. Thanks, guys.
That'll bring us to item D2, consideration and discussion regarding superintendent search survey and focus group feedback from Into Learning. We have Dr. Lancaster here to present. Mr. Martindale. Sounds good. I'll take
You
over.
did it, Mr. Horak. There's Dr. Lancaster.
There we go.
From Into Learning, going to provide you guys feedback from survey results. Brad, all yours, sir.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to shrink this document and switch. Let's see.
It's here.
Where's the, thank you.
Is this the one you
Perfect.
need? Okay.
First, let me start by saying, bond election presentation, superintendent search presentations, it's two of your biggest rocks that you'll cover as a school board. And
We felt like we were bored over the last few years.
So we told you early on that one of our purposes was to secure feedback and ask the community and staff, what is it you're looking for in a superintendent? We've done that with you as a board. And the purpose tonight is just to give you a brief overview of what we've found. And then, as you know, tomorrow we're going to meet again to review the applicant pool. I'm here to tell you we have 48 applications as of midnight Friday. And it is an outstanding pool. Very, very good pool. And we'll review those details with you tomorrow night. But tonight, I just wanted to give you a quick summary of what we found. We met with 4 groups. Dr. Colson and I did. We met with the principals. We met with assistant principals. We met with a teacher group. And we met then with the cabinet group. Chuck helped us with a survey. And I'm going to briefly review these comments. And then I'll show you the survey. And then I'll share with you just a quick summary of that. But you have access to all this information. I think one of my questions for you tonight is these 2 documents. One is just a set of notes that we took at each of those 4 staff feedback meetings, a summary of what we heard. And then the second is a 130 some odd page document that has all of the comments that were entered in the survey. And so both of those documents we have, and one question for you tonight is, would you like us to post those on the website as evidence of the process we've taken? There's nothing surprising in this, certainly nothing controversial, but good feedback of the questions we asked our principals and staff. And we have that available. We can add that to your website if you'd like, but you can think about that for a moment. So here are the notes we took from the principal feedback. We asked everybody essentially the same thing. What are the district's strengths? What are some challenges in the school district? And then what are some characteristics that you think we should look for in the next superintendent? This next group was the cabinet feedback. Again, strengths, challenges, and characteristics. Other issues that came up. One thing that was surprising in both the teacher group and in the cabinet group and the principal group, one of the nice qualities of the district that was referenced to us was specifically the school board. And I mention that because that's not always the case. And you should take some credit for having an environment that is seen by the staff as collegial, supportive, trusting the administration to do the jobs you hire them to do. In several of these sessions, we heard a variety of comments saying, we appreciate our school board. They know what they're doing. They're good at that. They're community representatives. But I mention that only because that's just not always the case. You go to TASB conferences, you know what it's like, and there are some acrimonious school boards right now. And yours is seen as cohesive, unified, not a rubber stamp, but a good, supportive, insightful group to work with and to work for. And so that's something worth mentioning. The assistant principal feedback, and then followed again by the teacher feedback. The other document I would show you is this survey results. We had 801 total surveys. You had students participating in the bond advisory committee. We had 80 students that participated in the survey. By far, the largest group were parents, 552, and you see the breakdown there. And we had the same kinds of questions. What are the strengths? What are the challenges? And what are you looking for in a superintendent? And if you pull this up, I caution you to not hit print. It's 130 pages, give or take. It's very lengthy. One comment, I did read through these. I can't say that I read every word, but I did. We are skimming this as we go through our process. One comment jumped out at me. It said, combine Mike Martindale and Eddie Colson equals the perfect superintendent, which I thought was pretty nice. It could be anybody but somebody like
That kind of
Eddie Colson.
drug Eddie down a little bit, didn't it, I
That's
guess?
not true. But so that was, that caught my eye. But this is available. You have these documents. And so the summary we have here is your district already has a leadership definition that all superintendent candidates should embrace. In addition to what's included in your existing leadership definition, the profile of the superintendent should include the following. And this is just a summary of all of the feedback we've heard. Being able to manage the ongoing student growth, including future bond elections, especially coming up in November, rezoning and budgeting. Some experience with rezoning, that's going to be an issue coming up. Somebody who's had that opportunity before. Provide leadership for all schools and departments around the strategic design framework that you already have in place. Retaining and recruiting staff is critical. Prioritizing safe, civil, and disciplined schools. Navigating the local, state, and national landscape, political landscape associated with schools. Being an active, engaged, and visible leader in the community. And finally, building unity between all campuses and departments. Any questions that I can provide for you on this feedback? I don't want to read it to you. You've got access to it. If you'd like, we can place this and add it as part of our superintendent search page. But I want to be able to answer any questions you might have.
One thing I noticed in looking through it was it looked like you guys kind of pulled out the themes when you put in the, and that's kind of what you guys saw. Those were the consistent themes when you talked about what the characteristics and the challenges. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Correct.
And you've obviously seen a lot more of the state and more school districts than I have, but I didn't see anything idiosyncratic to us as far as the challenges we're facing. It seemed like just the nature of modern education.
Correct.
And then, but I was really heartened by the view of what we have as our strengths. I think it's just Mike's left everything in such good stead for the next person to take and continue. It's not.
Very positive comments about a supportive community, about staff. Staff feels supported. But then in the challenges and opportunities, nothing. People use the terms like nothing hemorrhaging, nothing requiring a tourniquet. There are always going to be issues that can be improved. Student outcomes can be better. Retention of staff can be better. Pay can be better. But nothing that needs somebody to come in and make a wholesale change. And that was mentioned also there. People would like somebody who's not going to come in and make wholesale change. Take time to evaluate the strengths, talk to people in the community, on the staff, school board, and help determine. Well, first thing, you got to pass a bond election, ideally in November. And that's going to be a pretty quick order for somebody hitting the ground in July. But that's good because there are not gaping holes that need immediate, dramatic attention.
No, I also thought it was great to see so many positives about our differences, and I agree, many of the challenges, most of the challenges that were listed are things that other school districts are facing as well, for sure. That said, I still think those are real challenges, you know, and so, I mean, I think that's something at least I will consider when we look at the new person. Yeah, how can they help us get through those challenges? And how, honestly, how could they really help our state and all of public education get through some of those challenges?
Thank you.
And for the sake of the gnomes that work on the server farm, I'd be happy with just the summary to be posted. Not the whole 130 pages to get lost in.
On the Excel doc? Okay. I think we can talk about it and just kind of figure that out. If I don't see any issue, unless y'all tell me otherwise. See any issue with posting the feedback from the focus groups. I think the Excel doc is very overwhelming. I spent the weekend reading through some of this, going and blinking a lot. Yeah, everything starts to run together. So, because a lot of it is repetitive. There's some that are repetitive. So, I don't know. I think I'm kind of with you. Maybe some kind of paraphrasing, summarizing of what that Excel doc looks like might help out rather than just all 100 plus pages of it. So, but as far as those feedback surveys of what y'all outlined there, I think that'd be good just for everybody. I think that's okay.
I like what you have here to go up on the website versus what was sent to us. That's a little different, right?
It's verbatim.
Is it verbatim?
Should be the same.
Oh,
Well, there were multiple attachments, one for
Right.
principal, one for assistants.
right. I read through all
But-
those, but the last one was the survey, and yeah, it was a lot.
We did combine this into one document just for ease of upload
Yeah, yeah.
instead of 4 documents.
But besides what you kind of verbalized to us, do you have a summary of the bigger survey, kind of the high points? I mean, you kind of verbalized, but I don't.
The items I read to you what we would be to consider the summary of the entire feedback process, but summarizing the 130 pages, that'd be difficult to do. You know, on one hand, something to think about is the public knows you posted a survey and it was on your website, and there's no harm in providing a link to that survey results document. People don't have to read it, but it is revealing in warts and all. I did search it for curse words, and you know, there was a damn, I think one damn in there, but nothing more offensive than that, just to make sure somebody wasn't on there doing something just horsing around. But there is something to be said for, we did a survey and here are all the results. Here are all the comments.
I think just for the bite-sized pieces of it, it lends itself to a quadrant kind of one-pager. Because I live in Excel. I love Excel. It's a lot to read and you get lost in it. But I think just, you know, the SWOT, conveniently 4 quadrants, one slide, it's edible to everybody that wants to graze through and just kind of see. I think a summary would be much better. And it helps us communicating the big hits. And there's a lot of things that's almost saying the same, you know, strategic framework came up a lot. Maybe, yeah.
I would say that a lot of it intertwines with the focus groups. And if anything, the survey gets more into more detail, but it kind of aligns with the focus group feedback. So, you know, we all have access to it, so we can all use it as we kind of move through this process, obviously, and just kind of see where we're at. What else?
2 things I would mention for our meeting tomorrow night. Bring your calendar. We're going to ask you to commit to interview days. We need to lock those in. And so we'll have to have some dates to share at the close of our meeting tomorrow night. And so we need to lock those down. And second, I think Mr. Horak shared with you a document. We'll have a paper copy, but of potential interview questions. What we're going to ask you to do tomorrow night is each of you will take a section of that document, and you'll be responsible for asking some questions from that area of personnel management, student discipline management, board relations, community relations, whatever. Be prepared and have a first or second choice, because so that when we prepare for the interviews, we'll have a set of questions and who's to ask that question for each interview. That way you won't have to kind of fumble around who's doing what, but we'll need that commitment for you tomorrow night. So take a look at that between now and tomorrow at 5 or so, and be ready to discuss that with us as well.
This sort of goes back to the question of posting the whole 130 pages of the survey results. But in the process, as you are familiar with, how is this information that we should either on the website or in just written form provide this to the candidates so they walk in knowing what questions they may ask of us, and knowing, I don't want to say knowing what they're walking into, because that kind of has a negative connotation, but just what kind of our constituents have identified as strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and so forth.
We very easily can. When you determine who you'd like to interview, and we narrow that down tomorrow night, when we're setting up those interviews, some of the things we could share with them would be these documents, and they're free to peruse that.
Is that something that's typically done, or is that?
It has been done, absolutely.
Okay.
And the search we did in Midway, we did something similar to that. Here's the feedback we got, just so you know, and it helps kind of prepare. I don't know how much you prepare, but it helps a candidate think about, these are priorities in the school district, so this might come up. And so there's no harm in sharing that. It may be overwhelming, but most people are going to go to each question in the survey information and skim the first 10 or 20 or 30 responses, then go to the next question, because it does get repetitive after a bit. But in my mind, the more information is better. They can decide how they want to use it or consume it or not. Absolutely.
Mr. Mann, there will not be a candidate that doesn't do their homework before they sit in front of you, and that's the exploring our website. When you go to it, and the first thing you see strategic design and the bond committee work, they will educate themselves and be familiar with the circumstance. I suspect they are before they ever submitted their application to Dr. Lancaster and Dr. Colson. They will go and watch board meetings as well and those types of things, look at local media to educate themselves on the topics that have been most recently discussed.
Yeah, I'd almost rather not share it and have them, do their own homework instead of us doing it for them. That's so.
And y'all will have, you're posted for tomorrow evening at 5, executive session and review. You can absolutely have this conversation in great detail tomorrow night in executive to make a decision if you so choose.
Anything else? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Brad.
This is not a 1-hour meeting tomorrow. Yeah. Just want to prepare you. Okay, all right. Take some time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that'll bring us to item D3, consideration and discussion related to the 2023-24 budget development. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Horak. Yes, it is board, our CFO, Ms. Strauss. She has returned from New Zealand after, I was excited more than anyone to see her this morning when she returned.
I showed up.
So Ms. Strauss is here to do the budget development update for next school year. Amy?
Thank you, Mr. Martindale. Members of the board, so another time to kind of look at budget for next year. Of course, we always want to look at current year as well, because that's kind of our baseline. So tonight we will give you a quick update on 22-23, our current year, and where we think we're going to end up. We'll look at enrollment and projections for next year and kind of get a glimpse at 23-24. keeping in mind that legislative session has 2 more weeks. And so there's a lot of assumptions in here. So I just want to tell you that ahead of time. And just a little bit of information on compensation. Again, because of legislation that's currently being discussed, we don't have a lot of information there. So we've looked at enrollment and average daily attendance several times throughout, so I won't focus a lot on here, but this tells you for 21-22, our enrollment, and I use snapshot date, was 14,183, and this current year we were in is 14,489. So we had about a 2.15% increase. Looking at average daily attendance, because we have focused on the fact that since the pandemic, our attendance rate has not been what it was previously, and that does affect our revenue flow. But it looks, at this point, I've kind of estimated where I think we're going to be at the end of the year, that ADA is about a 2.5% increase, where that enrollment was a 2.15. So we are improving. And we hope to improve further next year. So we're getting back to, still not where we were, but it looked a little better than last year. So looking at 22-23 and kind of projecting where I think we'll be at the end of the year, we all know that enrollment did not materialize quite the way we budgeted, but we have had some increases in interest earnings and some other things to help make up for that. So, and the TRE, of course, definitely helped. So I think operational wise, we're going to come very close to a break even. And then we still have those extraordinary items with regard to the hailstorm that's coming through. So we do have one that's not accounted for on here. It's out for proposals right now. We have an additional roof that we found late in the process that will come, hopefully we're going to get done this summer. But we've already met our deductibles, so it's just a matter of what that unrecoverable depreciation might be. So it shouldn't be the large numbers we saw in the last budget year. So very, very close to a break-even budget. When you said minus 126,000 on 139 million, it's pretty darn close. So looking ahead to 23-24, this is information from our demographer, Zonda Demographics. It's projecting about a 1.6% increase in student enrollment overall. Using the same enrollment or attendance projections, that would put us potentially at average daily attendance of 13,558. I did go with the same attendance rates that we're experiencing this year. And that attendance rate is at the bottom, if you want to know. So it's based on 94.8%. Prior year was 93.7. So we did, a whole percentage point better. A lot of talk about property values. Those preliminary values came out, showing about over a 21% increase in property values. That is reevaluations as well as new growth. The appraisal district is estimating around 18% once all of the finals and the appeals go through. That's not for sure. That's not for certain, so we'll have to wait and see. Certified values we will get around July 25th. And we also have to remember that there's a lot of legislation out there right now that could affect this. Some of that legislation would limit growth on a per year basis. And so this is taxable values under current law. So there's still a lot of unknowns here. So before we look at revenue projections, I want to tell you some of the assumptions that I used. Again, we've already talked about that 1.6% increase in enrollment. Property value growth, I used 7%. So you may wonder why 7% whenever we just said it could be as high as 18. Some of the legislation out there would limit it to somewhere between 5 and 10%. So if we use 7, that could take into account some of these bills that are out there, but we just don't know. But based on a 7%, my estimate is that the required tax rate compression, our M&O tax rate would decline about 3.5 cents. If this tax property value growth is a lot higher, what it's going to do is compress more. It's really not going to bring us any more revenue. So that's why, bottom line, it's not going to make a lot of difference. If that does come in higher, what it's going to affect is the tax rate itself.
But you would anticipate minimum compression of 3.6 cents.
Yes. Also use the funding formula that we are under right now. It's the only thing that I have to calculate on. So it's based on Senate Bill 1 that was passed in 2021. The basic allotment that I used remains the same that we have right now, that's $6,160. But there is a piece of the formula, it's called a guaranteed yield, that is, we've been told, would increase from 98.56 to 126.29. And so that has been factored in here into the revenue projections. It's the only change in the current funding formula that I did make. And then lastly, as our ESSER funds, the federal funds that we've been spending over the last couple of years, as it declines, our indirect costs that we are able to recognize as revenue, of course, declines as well. So I took that down by $200,000. So I have preliminary in red for a very good reason. That's because, we know in about 2 weeks that's going to change. But looking at all of those estimates with those assumptions, total revenue I'm estimating to be a little over $142.5 million for the general fund. But that will have us with recapture of a little over $2 million. That's because property value growth in the 7s, enrollment growth at about 1.6, it's going to result in recapture. So net of recapture, $140,463,000 is what my estimates are at this point in time. Then looking at expenditures, this does not include additional compensation at this point in time, but our baseline is always this last year's budget, which is after the TRE and the raises. So this was the amendment that you approved in January. And then looking at some things that we have either already highly considered or we know it's going to occur, another $3.8 million. That's utilities, substitutes. We know we're going to have some increases in our healthcare insurance. ESSER 3, as it declines, we have some more expenditures we need to move back over. Fuel, just to highlight a few of those. And then we've already seen a lot of inflation throughout this current year. So trying to capture some of that plus where we think it's going to be next year. So estimated expenditures at this point, excluding any raises, $140.6 million. So that says we have about $740,000 left at this point. But then looking at compensation, first I kind of want to show you teacher salaries. So the top chart is 21-22, where we ended last year. So that tells you that at the 0 year, we were in the 93 percentile. And the green means we improved from the prior year. The yellow is we were neutral on that percentile for our comparison groups, and the red is we had decline. So that top one is College Station with our peer groups once they all set their salaries. So for 22-23, after we did that mid-year salary increase, you can see at every year interval that we're in the green, so we improved. So that's the direction we wanted to go. So that is very good news for our salary schedules. And then lastly, looking at compensation, the estimated cost for every 1% is about $1.1 million to the general fund. Yes. Yes. Timeline. So we're at the May board workshop. We should be able to bring some compensation information pending the legislative session that it does end at the end of May or June 1st. So at least start bringing you some information at the June board meeting. And then, of course, we've got our certified values that we have to get, our property values, before we can make any final calculations on the tax rates and revenues. If we had if we did this at the regular board meeting, that would be shooting for August 15th. I can tell you right now, it's going to be very tight. When you look at having us, the advertisements we have to do 10 days prior, and we're waiting on tax information on 25th, and then again, information from TEA on August 1st. It's going to be very tight, but we're going to shoot for this date so we don't have to have a special meeting.
So at the June workshop, Amy, Rick and Kim and just kind of went through, I know administration is going to go deeper into those projects, but also can kind of provide some financial forecasting as far as the INS rate for the board to look at.
Yes.
And what that 350 would or would not do to the debt service rate, correct?
Yes, sir. We'll be ready.
So run some of those numbers at that point in time as well.
I apologize mostly to Dr. Perry because she's explained it like 3 times. Right now, we're compensated based on enrollment or average daily attendance.
Average daily attendance.
But there are bills that are up for, and is one more beneficial than the other?
Absolutely, because the enrollment, it'd be more beneficial unless they make some other changes in there to compensate it, because, you know, we're having to staff for every student that's enrolled. And whether they showed up or not, so even at elementary, when we look at our classroom sizes, you know, we are staffing it as if those children were there every day. But we're only being funded on if they attended, so absolutely.
So when people reach out to their state representative, Kyle Geseller, John Rainey, they want to talk about enrollment because that's what we're
Right. You know,
Without a
and things
change to
happen.
the basic allotment.
Right, yeah, basically.
Or otherwise, keep an eye, because they can change it to enrollment based and drop the basic allotment a couple of $100 and your
Yeah.
death it's not going to
And
be
that's
any
where I said it
different.
depends on, as long as they don't change other things in there to offset that, enrollment would be better. Because, you know, there's times, flu season, and those when, you know, attendance is just not there. So it would be very.
Oh, yeah, I'll follow up. It's the basic allotment that's really the bottom line that would affect our bottom line. And it looks like it's not, right now, doesn't look like it's moving, except for a little bit for, can you explain that, the guaranteed yield increase?
So yes, the guaranteed yield, there's 2 tiers in the funding formula of revenue. The tier 2, this guaranteed allotment, is a supplement to the main funding. And what it is it's going to guarantee a certain amount of tax revenue per penny per weighted average daily attendance.
Could you go back to that slide as you're
Which one?
describing that? I think because I had the same question.
This one?
Yeah.
So is another way of saying that we're looking at like $28 of increase from 98?
It's only on so many cents of, I think it's a certain cents of the tax rate that you're over. Used to be the dollar, and now everybody's, because of compression, they're kind of all over the place. So it's a supplement to the basic allotment.
So it's not even a per kid, per student?
It's based on per weighted average daily attendance.
I've got a couple of questions, kind of big picture. On the revenue side for this year versus the anticipated best guess, I guess, for 23, 24, what were those 2 numbers again?
Let me see. So is this the page you're looking at?
Yeah,
So this is current year.
yeah. So 139, 400.
That was the amended budget. I think we're going to be at around 138 for. But
Okay.
then you have recapture in there, so that's part of it. So that's where I think we're going to end, pretty close to that.
And then your best estimate for 23, 24 was 140, so about $2 million
Yes.
more, give or take.
That's under the current formula.
under the current
With
formula.
1.6%
I think, wonder if Josh is looking at the page where you project currently without any compensation accounted for to the good of, under these current circumstances, to the good about 800,000. Maybe that's not what he's looking for. Keep going.
This one?
Right here. That's the one.
Yes, that's
the
it.
I'm
story.
sorry. Okay.
Now, let me ask Amy, I know there are some bills floating around and some projections on school finance. Are you familiar with any of those that might benefit or would benefit the district on the revenue side? And understanding that just because they're floating around right now, they'll change 100 times by the time you sit back down in June. But are there any numbers you're familiar with and as to what impact as is sitting there today? And I'm sorry, it's not necessarily a fair question,
No,
but
it's okay. Yes, I have looked at some models that have been run for College Station. And one of the bills out there that they're really modifying and amending as we go could bring an additional $2 to $3 million to the district. But much of that would be specific to compensation. So it's going to be under the current law, depending on what they change, you have to spend a certain percentage of that on additional compensation. And there is some specific dollars.
I would assume what you would do anyway, correct?
Yeah.
My point being in that if you're to the good 2 or 3 million with those adjustments you're tracking plus 800 now, that begins to give you a feel as to some of the future conversations, right? Understanding that everything said now is a what if. So please understand that. But as Amy mentioned, I know there's one floating around and there's a projection that benefits the district. I think I remember 2.3. It may be a little bit better, but
And that can be, much of that has to be spent on additional compensation or benefits.
and Amy's done a wonderful job with this because she has accounted for a lot of the increases she anticipates outside of course compensation, and if there are any decisions along the lines of staffing, that would have to be incorporated as well.
And second question, what time is it in New Zealand right now?
17 hours later.
Later. So it's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow over
Got
there.
you.
I had Mother's Day twice, so that was okay.
We told her to quit texting us and send us emails. That's what-
I do have a question about the compensation slide. So
This one or the other one?
So the 22, 23, we're in the green. I mean, I know that means that we've improved, but that is still us. Those numbers are still us compared to that group listed on the bottom, like with the raises that they gave.
Yes, that is.
22,
that-
23?
For 22, 23, the comparison group, the districts that I used are there at the bottom. And it is our 22, 23 salaries after the TRE that passed compared to theirs. So that is
Okay.
current.
Okay.
So that will be our baseline and try to improve upon those percentiles that are listed there for next year.
Okay.
So we made progress, but we're still lagging.
Yeah.
Right. That's what
bottom.
I'm.
Yeah, the
right,
charge is to keep that green,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Keep going in the green.
Right. Especially after I read some of those survey things that we got back.
Back on the previous slide, because obviously, I mean, well, no, maybe it wasn't the previous. No, it was that one, yes. I mean, $3.8 million worth of estimated additions. A lot of those look to be just kind of inflation-type
A
hits.
lot of them are. So
Right.
Some of our
Right.
struggle this year is that, the inflation. So some of these are
Trying to account
current
for
year
those.
catching up where we need to be, plus some more.
Then the other one, the biggie on there is the ESSER 3. Is there any more details on what that 625 is?
It would, my recommendation would be from our current year spending to next is that we move some of the personnel units back over to the general fund that we have in ESSER. That would be my recommendation.
Because are things like the summer school programs and some of those programs still accounted for?
Yes,
in-
so we would
in
have
this
enough
budget?
ESSER funds for this summer 23 and one more 24 out of grants that we have and ESSER. So then we would be looking for, if we continued summer school the way we have been going, we would be looking for funding after that. We are setting aside some other Title I funds and some things like that. We are starting to grow that budget for summer school as well. But it won't fund all of it. So we're covered for, I think, 2 more summers.
Got it. But we still are using some of that ESSER funds beyond this, this recovery. Yeah.
Everybody good? Welcome back, and thank you. Brings us to D4, consideration and discussion regarding College View Accelerated Academy and participation in the optional flexible school day program beginning in 2023-24 school year. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Horak and board members. Dr. Perry and Ms. Parkinson going to share some information regarding this agenda item with the board. There is no action or decision point this evening. However, they are going to share some information for consideration and conversation, and depending on how that conversation goes, might drive, if you see this item in the near future, for possible action. And it has to do with some flexible scheduling that could be utilized at College View High School. So, ladies.
Thank you, Mr. Martindale and Mr. Horak, members of the board. This is actually a conversation that has been an outgrowth of the evolution of College View High School that you all have had an opportunity to hear about over the last several years. And it is a conversation that we really began in earnest several months ago as we explored ways to further enhance one of the particular options at College View, which is the Accelerated Academy. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what the optional flexible school day program is, what our current data looks like regarding our student needs, and then Ms. Parkerson will describe a little bit about what this could potentially look like should we decide in the future to move forward with applying to be a part of this program. So this is in Texas statute, the optional flexible school day program, which is quite a mouthful, and we love acronyms, right? So OFSDP allows districts to provide flexible hours and days of attendance for specific students. So the goal of this program is really about improving graduation rates for students who are in danger of dropping out or who maybe already have dropped out that we have recovered. So Tiffany's going to speak a little bit about the record audit that was shared in DEIC last month.
All right, so we shared some information about just our current dropout efforts in the district. And so every September, we conduct an audit in conjunction with our campuses, administration and counselors, and from the district level with the student recovery facilitator who works in technology. And so we work with both our middle and our high school campuses to look at our students who are identified as potential dropouts or PEIMS code 98. And we have an opportunity to try to locate them elsewhere if they have transferred to another school district, whether that be in state or out of state, and or to have them return to College Station ISD and begin the next school year with us. And we were able to change those codes. So this last school year, we had 61 students who were potentially identified as dropouts at the beginning of September, and by the time we had to report that to the state, we were down to 33. And so that just gives you kind of an idea of the transience of this group of students who we're trying to serve, and that it takes all of us together putting forth great effort to make sure that we are locating these students and enticing them either back to school or making sure they've enrolled in another school district. Also of note, we had 15 students that did withdraw from CSISD to attend a high school equivalency program or a GED program. It is difficult for us to track how many of those students actually complete the program because much like military enlistment on CCMR, we are entirely beholden to those students to come back and give us that information. And so we weren't able to say how many of those folks did complete that requirement.
It probably is useful to know also that those students are actually reported as dropouts, even if they do complete their GED program.
Yes, ma'am.
So you've seen this information before regarding our most recent taper report, but we wanted to remind you of what our data regarding graduation rates and annual dropout rates are. So for CSISD, we are at 94.7% for our four-year graduation rate, as compared to the state at 90%. So we were much higher than the state. As far as our annual dropout rate, we were at 3.1% of our high school students, whereas the state is at 5.8. And so while when we compare ourselves to the states, we are in fairly good shape. I think really the impetus behind our bringing this to you this afternoon or evening is really that, we're talking about success each life, each day, and we want to make sure that we're doing all that we can to serve all of the students in our community. And this program is one of those ways we can potentially do that. And so as far as the Accelerated Academy, this has been our first year to offer that program at College View. As a reminder, it is its own designated campus number. It is on the alternative accountability system for us, and it is designated as our dropout prevention and recovery campus. So at College View this year, we have served 41 students. We have 25 seats in our Accelerated Academy lab space. And so of those 41 students, we have 17 who are currently in the academy and taking courses at College View. And we anticipate that the vast majority of those folks are going to either be ready to walk the stage with us next week, and if not, then in August. We already have 10 students who have completed their graduation requirements and exited the program and opened up seats for other students to be able to take those. And then we had 14 students who have withdrawn to other programs, whether that be other schools, home schools. And we did have one student who will officially, one or two students, I believe, who will officially be documented as dropouts from the program in spite of our efforts.
All right. So in thinking about the optional flexible school day program, this is an opportunity with board approval to submit an application to the Texas Education Agency. We would have to include information about how we would describe the program, what the schedule would look like for the students participating, how we would staff it, as well as the qualifications of any staff, and then certainly attendance procedures, because we are talking about a more flexible attendance process. Before we could begin the program, we would then have to receive that approval from the Texas Education Agency and verify that the students participating are eligible to participate. Because, as Tiffany described, the College View Accelerated Academy is designed and designated as our dropout recovery school, all students would be eligible under the criteria listed here in terms of either at risk of dropping out or having dropped out, as well as attending the credit recovery school. And then we would also require written permission from the parent or adult student before they could participate in that flexible scheduling option. If approved and we were to move forward, we would have some obligations regarding progress monitoring. We would have to establish some performance indicators, including things like graduation rates and student achievement. And then annually, we would review those in an open meeting with you all as the Board of Trustees and ensure that we're following the guidelines set forth and monitoring progress. Funding, which is probably the number one question about this particular program, is very different than it is in terms of having to meet that minimum number of minutes requirement with an instructional calendar for our typical campuses. And so in this program, it would be based on the number of instructional days in the calendar, and attendance could be accumulated over time rather than in the same way. So looking at that a little more specifically, we would be providing instruction in a more flexible way. The minimum is 45 minutes within the program, although it really is a minimum 4-hour day because this is a dropout recovery program. There's lots of different ways to do this, and Tiffany will speak more to what our vision, at least of beginning the program, would look like. But you could extend the day, you could offer classes beyond the typical instructional calendar, you could have flexible schedules, and then you can also provide the coursework online.
So as far as planning forward for College View's Accelerated Academy, I just noticed as I was looking down that we've had an update. I updated the other slide. We do have 17 students. We got 2 of those cleared since we started working on this presentation. And so once again, we've had 41 students who are served through the new Accelerated Academy that we've added. Also for context, at the height of Timber Academy, we served about 75 students in a year through that program, which was also our designated dropout prevention program at the time. So with Consol and CSHS, we also offer night school programs. We have a total of 40 students between those 2 programs who also could potentially benefit from moving over to the Accelerated Academy. Not to mention that at each of our high schools' credit recovery programs, we have over 200 students who are recovering credit and on their path toward graduation, and so they could potentially be enticed to come to the Accelerated Academy as well. So right now, our students are required to be full-time students and to attend full instructional days and meet the same 76,500 minutes of instruction as our students at the 2 comprehensive high schools or in the other programs at College View. They have no flexibility for a shortened day to meet their work requirements or other personal obligations, and to have the flexibility to see to some of those needs that we have found often pull them away from being able to be focused on their time in school with us. So when we are looking forward toward potentially offering the flexible school day at the Accelerated Academy, we're looking at beginning with 2 4-hour session options. So we would have a morning group of students who would come to school from 8 to noon. We, of course, would give them the opportunity to eat lunch with us after, should they choose to do so. And another set of students, another cohort of students from noon to 4 p.m. We would be able to do this with our current staffing allotment, our 1 teacher who we have serving that program, and we would double our potential capacity of students who we could serve all at one time by opening those 2 windows. We could serve up to 50 students in the same amount of space, and so really it would help us to serve a broader reach of students and really have something that is different to entice them to come and use those 4 hours with us really well to open up the rest of their day to meet their other needs.
So should we decide to move forward, we would continue conversation and potentially take action in June in order to submit that application to TEA. If approved, of course, we would first notify students who are currently enrolled and make individualized plans regarding what their day would look like. Then we would also want to make sure that our comprehensive high schools, administrators, counselors are very well aware of the change in programming and options, so that we could identify potential students that are not currently served there, perhaps the ones, some of those who are being served in their comprehensive high school accelerated programs. Then if approved, we would certainly need to finalize the schedule, the staffing, and any other program details such as attendance taking procedures. We do feel like that this would be an option that could very much benefit the population of students that we are endeavoring to serve, and I would love to answer any questions or hear any comments that you might have regarding the program.
So just so I understand, just in summary, currently students have to attend the full day. That's what it is. If this is considered and brought back for board consideration, and if approved, then you could offer the option for students in that particular academy a 4-hour day, correct?
Yes,
and they would be
correct.
fully funded accordingly because you get it approved through TEA, even though they attend 4 hours. It's fully funded from the funding mechanism, but more importantly, it provides the students flexibility in their scheduling, because some or many of these students also hold jobs to help support themselves and their family at times. So this would allow them the option or more flexibility in school and work life. Am I over? That's a summary of it?
That's it. Well said.
Okay.
Do we have any, I assume we do, data from the high schools that show obviously interest in this? And then with that data, is it possible that we might have over interest more than the 50 kids?
So based on the conversations that I've had, which this is anecdotal data with Mr. Grimes and with Ms. Elder, whenever they are speaking with students who would be greatly benefited by coming to the Accelerated Academy, they need more of a draw, right? That by that time, many of these students are invested in being Tigers or Cougars, and having the option to go to make the move to become Timberwolves, but go part-time, 4 hours, we believe will make a big difference in enticing some students who would really benefit from the program, and really helping the two comprehensive high schools as well. So anecdotally, I would say yes, we foresee a lot of interest. I would foresee us having a waiting list for our programs actually this time next year.
Sometimes, Mr. Warwick, you would have to consider, there would have to be a matrix of some sort to determine if you have a waiting list and prioritize. And sometimes something that's considered on that is exactly how many credits do they need to make up, those types of things. Who's a good candidate and who would benefit and get to the finish line if provided this opportunity, or they, need a whole slew of credits where they probably need to hold tight at the comprehensive high school. So I think you kind of have to look at how they're tracking and classified, the number of credits they've received over X number of years as well.
And while the capacity at any given time is 50 students, as students finish, then we'd be able to bring the next students in.
And along those lines, is it usually students are working to finish, or is it sometimes maybe they're even, freshman or sophomore who just got behind? Which do we see the most or anticipate?
So right now, we're serving more of the students who got behind than are starting at freshman and sophomore year, trying to graduate early, if you will. I'm not sure I'm answering your question.
Well, I didn't know, are they usually finishing and graduating through at the end of this, or are they maybe catching up and then going back to a comprehensive high school?
Our goal is for them to catch up and graduate from the Accelerated Academy at College.
From the Accelerated Academy, okay. Well, I will just say I am very much excited to hear about this and very much for it. I mean, we can talk about if there's any other negatives I'm missing, but I really think it is something we should be offering to our students to get those, even if it is, we're looking at the 30 to 40 that need to get through to graduation. I'm excited to hear about it.
Same. I remember being inspired at one of the College View graduations by one of our speakers a couple years ago. The kiddo talked about how they would get up and they'd go work in the morning before school, then they'd do a full day of school, and then they'd go back to work. And I was just like, holy cow, how are you doing this? And I was in awe, and so this would be perfect for that kiddo, that's already at College View also. So I'm with Kimberly. I'm trying to see the negatives.
And just to save calls and emails and texts from my neighbors or them knocking on my door, we're looking only at College View and not the comprehensive high schools.
Absolutely.
For making alternative
This would-
schedules.
Even just within College View, specifically the Accelerated
It's not even
Academy.
all of College View, Dr.
Right.
Payne. And this has to be done through application with TEA and approved accordingly.
Just looking for clarification.
Tell our neighbors that's not an option.
No, I think it's a great point, because even it's not just kids who just want to go to school for half a day. It's kids that we've identified that need that opportunity.
They must meet those eligibility criteria that we discussed.
Wonderful. Thank you.
It is, I'll just add this, and it is wonderful to see the vision of College View continue to evolve. And that's through the work of many people, in particular Tiffany and Dr. Heath, that it's really taking shape. And this is the purpose of it, right? Is this type of thing to meet the needs of students that the traditional comprehensive high school isn't necessarily the fit for them. So
I'll just follow that. I do hear wonderful things about what's going on over there. It would probably be nice, at least from my standpoint, be nice to get an update on all the programs that are happening since, and kind of the numbers at some point soon. I don't know if that's scheduled already, but it would be, from my point, it would be nice to get an update.
All right. Thank y'all very much. That'll bring us to item 5, consideration and discussion regarding a possible date to hold a joint meeting with the City of College Station City Council. Mr. Martindale.
Thank you, Mr. Horak. The city reached out to me to see if the board would be possibly interested in a joint meeting. They've penciled in a date on their calendars, so I'm going to mention it to you. You can let me know if it's an option or not, and I will communicate accordingly with Brian Woods and Jeff Capps. Thursday, September 28th, and they're looking at 6 p.m. So really, I'm wondering, get the group to check that and see if you have a conflict as we sit here today, or if I need to go back to them and tell them this is not an option for the group.
That would appear the day before TASB, is that correct?
I'm sorry, say it again.
I think it's the day before TASB.
The day before TASB?
Well, I'm assuming, I don't have the whole thing, I just have it blocked off. Yeah, TASB looks
Well,
to
I
be
did not look
Friday
at
the
TASB
20th.
for this fall.
I wonder why.
Oh, why?
I wonder why.
I didn't
Short
check my
timer.
calendar on that one.
So I would say before we can make a decision, we would need to see when we need it, or what groups need to be at TASB when.
Yeah, because it does start the 29th, but I don't know what is
Yep.
expected
7 a.m.
of the
typically.
night before or when.
Typically starts at 7 a.m. Friday morning.
Yeah,
And I
usually.
go to those.
I'm going to say we probably need
So-
some more dates from
I think
City
so, too.
Council.
Y'all, you are interested in this possibility,
Absolutely,
though? Okay.
absolutely.
Before
And I will
before you
work-
retire.
Have fun with that.
Can we get it, this month?
I will check with city and see if there's a couple other options. Let them know that the 28th doesn't really work due to professional conference. And I will attempt to communicate that out to the group and see if there are some additional dates that Dr. Perry can share with you at the June workshop.
All right. That'll bring us to item E, adjourn.